The best game in snow was released 8 years ago in Red Dead Redemption 2. Therefore, I want to find out the reason for this stagnation and why the Labour parties turn a blind eye to it. Ordinary hard workers, instead of huge snowdrifts, get grass like cows instead of doing little somersaults in the snow. They force you to crawl in the mud like a pig. AAA feudalism does not share the fruits of its progress with simple developers trying to build better snow. I am here to solve this problem for you on a global scale. I started with a deep investigation of existing implementations and identified several of the supposedly best snow systems, which I will surpass easily. Ghost of Yotei, God of War Ragnarok, The Stranding 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, and of course, Roblox. The recent Ghost of Yotei showed a really good level of snow detail, which might actually be the best we have seen so far, but do not let old grandpa's grey balls fool you. That's not how snow looks like in real life. Actually, snow is much more soft and crumbly. In God of War, when Kratos rolls, flags fly off him, which is most likely meant to make him look more epic. And it looks realistic, but the little balls left on the surface look more like potatoes, so he ends up resembling a Belarusian, who slapped a hoy on his back, oiled himself up, and is digging up potatoes by rolling around in the snow. Assassin's Creed Shadows is the 14th instance from Ubisoft. By this point, they had reached a consensus that snow has very contrasting detail and spreads out around footprints. Or it is just paper and salmon. Red Dead Redemption 2 has the highest quality result not because it looks good visually, but because it does not try to turn snow into mud, painted white. Another incredible feature is that the bootprints are very high quality on shallow snow, which is likely handled by a completely different system from basic snow deformation. Also, if you look closely at the moment the snow shifts, you can see how the professional VFX artists masterfully recreated the visual effect of farting into flour. No graininess, no flakes, just translucent textures at the feet and a little stretchy surface. I like that the Stranding does not even try to draw extra noise on the snow and instead visualizes it with smooth shadow, which is handled not only by lighting, but the lower layer of snow is darker than upper one. Thus, I carried out a qualitative analysis of all snow and found that there are no mounds, no shifts, no spreading, no avalanches, no blizzards, no clouds, no little baby somersaults. Gathering my entire budget in the full size of a single sandwich, I started my professional research with the best scientific source, YouTube tutorials. And I quickly realized that where these jagged triangle solutions from a percussive GPT accounts came from. Technically, it works very simply. A top-down camera reads small images created above the surface and writes them to a material that pushes down the triangles. Biologically, the snow can tear your ass apart. So, I implemented it a little differently. Instead of using a camera and textures, I used a compute shader and big crusader balls, since balls are just easier to dip into snow in-game. The first issue immediately visible with this dull snow is that I need to make it push to the side instead of just pressing down. This sounds hard technically, but it is never hard in the snow, biologically. To implement this idea, I did not use math at all. Instead, I created transparent boats on the snow surface that constantly drop snow underneath themselves until they run out of snow. They gather snow based on how much of it was removed when a footprint is made and launch it in different directions at some inherited speed. Just some little pooping boats algorithm. A nice benefit of these boats is that the snow is distributed physically, taking the total volume into account. This way, the snow does not just disappear or get magically added, so generally you can displace a little less of it to simulate compression. And if you want the player to suffer, you can set it up like this. Currently, this snow still has a major problem. The displaced snow is too sharp, and cleared snow in general can create an overly abrupt transition, which makes the snow look very jagged, just like a brace's job. It simply needs to be smoothed out where the slope is too steep. Physically, snow stays in place due to its degree of viscosity or yield stress. However, since implementing this would be too costly, we can simply use the sharpness of the angle between the values from the grid. There is actually a huge number of smoothing algorithms, and I implemented quite a few of them, but I was incredibly frustrated by how many resources they consumed. So, in the end, I had to choose not based on visuals and not even on plane optimization, but simply based on which computation could be run as isolated as possible without touching the rest of the snow. And that turned out to be diffuse. It can be implemented in different ways. There is a faster computing version and one that smoothes the snow with a physically accurate representation. It is quite interesting that a mathematical artifact allows you to have a nice texture on the snow without adding any noise at all. Also, a neat detail I stumbled onto for the first time while working with this tool, since reading data back from the GPU is slow and expensive, I built a second simplified version of the snow that lives on the CPU. And I read the surface height from that instead. Without this physical copy, there would be no data at all on where the snow really sits, because the snow is just a static plane lying on the floor. Next, about gays and blacks. Snow is usually not just a white blanket, it consists of tiny crystals that refract light at random angles, and because of this, a glitter-like effect appears. Therefore, I added sparkles and configured them very minimally. All it is missing is some warm dog poop, and it will match reality exactly. These days, it is common to fake microscopic details which are not actually there, painting normals as if tattooing the ground. Give it another 2 years and they will be simulating the crystal lattice of every individual snowflake, while the player gallops past on a horse. So, I decided to leave the snow tattooing to Ubisoft and just keep my snow as a single plain color. If you look at the shapes left by ski tracks on the snow very carefully at the moment when the ski returns, then you will probably be able to see, or any other video, and it is how visual effects should look. From earlier it is clear that visual effects are a very demanding part of any game, so it is important to use minimal resources for maximum visual output, since layering transparent quads on the screen forces the GPU to render each pixel multiple times. That's why I decided not to take the AAA role here, displaying a texture that conveys as much detail as possible, because it looks way too fakey. I chose not to display more of these textures, but instead to use ones with lower image detail and a larger size. And in addition to this, I create a large number of opaque particles that are rendered only once, since they are drawn on top of everything else. Also, I really like the snowflakes from God of War, and I save them a lot in references, so I added them too. They are not transparent and even stay on the snow, like in Ghost of Yotei, but in smaller quantities and a smaller size. Next, about hentai stomachs. Everyone wants to stuff the best game in the world in the calculator at 100 FPS, so as my target device I picked a laptop with 3050, which is a pretty minimal device nowadays. An empty game scene on it takes about 4 milliseconds for processing time, since that covers screen processing and the minimal engine data handling that any game would use. So the stationary snow visible on screen is processed in just 1 millisecond. That's the triangle and lighting work. Everything else is skipped, where nothing is moving through the snow. That is 1000 FPS if you subtract the base 4 milliseconds, of course. If you move the ball, it takes around 3.14 milliseconds or 318 FPS of processing. But it is important to know that the bottleneck is on the GPU. And you can ease it in a number of ways at the cost of quality, lower the tessellation, reduce the number of VFX, reduce the spawn rate of shift elements, or reduce the rate at which footprints are created. I have already optimized this by processing each small group of cells on a separate thread, The smoothing only runs on the small area that was affected a few seconds ago, and this is the end of what I have created. Also, it looks like shaving cream on 13 yards old peach fuzz. I like that it has more accurate physics, which allows you to have taller snow. This tool for Unity is already available on my Patreon. It needs to fit specifics of your game, so code is open to modify, and I would be grateful for any support there. Speaking about food job from earlier, this is done using the decal technique, which layers an image onto an already existing surface. You can't add many of these images, but they can convey a more precise visual for things that shouldn't have detailed geometry. By the way, you can see something similar in other games too. It is often used for mud, and it is the same technique for bullet holes. Also, in real life, snow does not actually shift as prettily. It mostly gets pressed down, forming denser snow that you can stand on. This could be implemented by having a footprint write a density value into the cell, and an object could then stand on that snow related to its mass. As for liquid-like snow, where you could form a bulge that overhangs, this is usually done through the voxel-based terrain technique, like in Deep Rock Galactic, which has nothing to do with the current snow system, so I think it is better to expand it as a combination of the two systems rather than extending the current one. Going forward, I think it would make more sense to build a game around this snow, so I can understand which mechanics are actually most needed and how much optimization snow really requires. It will take me about 1 month, I think, so if you are interested in a game with high quality snow, subscribe.